Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Dirshu Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Hey. Mirz Hashem, today we're going to be learning Daf Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. It's going to be a bit of an abbreviated share today, I'm afraid. A little bit of a crazy day today, and I have to say another share yet tonight on Sefer Tehillim. So we're going to cover a page. I had hoped to cover up the day that we're short today, but it doesn't look to me like that's in the cards. So we pick up today in Siman Tov Kuf Chavav Sif Hey. Bottom line of Daf Kuf Mem Vav Amud Beis. Says the Mechaber, HaChofer Kever Lemeis B'Yom Tov Sheni. If somebody digs a kever, somebody digs a grave for a mace on Yom Tov Sheni. If you remember yesterday, the Mechaber used quite strong language. The language of the Mechaber was, he said, Yom Tov Sheni L'gabe Mace K'chol Shavua Rabbanon. We said that the Chazal made Yom Tov Sheni in the context of taking care of a mace as if it was a weekday. And in the Mishnah Berurah, we said not really as if it's a weekday, as if it's equal to Chol HaMoed. But you are allowed to dig a kever for a mace on Yom Tov Sheni. So the Mechaber says, HaChofer kever l'meis b'Yom Tov Sheni. If somebody does dig a kever for a mace on the second day of Yom Tov, muter loy lital schar. He is allowed to take pay for the work that he did. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut and lamed aleph here on Kuf Mem Vav Amud Beis. HaChofer v'hu hadin hanoisen bad l'tachrichin. The same halacha would apply if a textile salesman gave a bolt of linen to be used for tachrichin for the mace. He's also allowed to get paid, so he's allowed to take pay after Yom Tov for those tachrichin, for that fabric. He's allowed to take pay for the work that he did. However, like we've said many times before, whenever you're doing any kind of transaction on Yom Tov that's mutter, l'tzarich Yom Tov, you're not allowed to mention a price. So there's no haggling over price, etc., etc. So, for that reason, the Mishnah Berurah says, yes, you could get paid for supplying the linen for the tachrichin, you could get paid for digging the kever. However, you cannot mention an amount. And certainly you're not actually going to take the money on Yom Tov. What this means is that after Yom Tov you'll get back together and you'll say, all right, I worked for 2 hours on Yom Tov to go dig the kever, etc. You owe me so and so much. I supplied the linen for the tachrichin on Yom Tov. You owe me, it was so and so many yards. You owe me so and so much. V'gam bozeh, and the truth is, the Chavetz Chaim brings down that even in this manner, ikaman Amar da'aser, there is a man Amar that says that you're not allowed to do this. De'ein likach schar Shabbos, because the bottom line is you did work on Shabbos, and this doesn't only mean Shabbos, it means Shabbos or Yom Tov. You did work on Shabbos or Yom Tov, and we don't want you to take schar Shabbos. We don't want you to get paid for work that you did on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Ella, however, the yesha matir b'makom mitzvah. There are those that are matir. In a case like this, where we're talking about digging a kever for a mace, so they're matir b'makom mitzvah that you could take schar Shabbos and Yom Tov. And we saw this previously in Hilchos Shabbos in Siman Shin Vav Sif Hey. Miu, however, im ein hachofer roitza lachbar ella im kein yiktitzu imoy damim. Let's say you need somebody to dig the kever on Yom Tov, and you go to a yid, you don't have somebody else available, you go to a yid and you ask him to dig the kever, and he says, look, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it without getting paid. I want to get paid. So, if he doesn't want to dig, he wants to make up a price. He says, look, I'll dig the kever, but you're going to have to pay me $200. And they say, well, we're not really supposed to discuss an amount of money. He says, listen, I'm not doing the work unless I know what I'm getting paid. Or not only that, maybe the grave digger says, listen, I'm not doing this unless I actually get paid on Yom Tov. I want to receive my money on Yom Tov. Even though certainly the grave digger is doing wrong by doing this, it's averu biyadai. Nevertheless, it is okay for the relatives of the mace to actually go ahead and give the money to the grave digger The Yom Tov Sheni legabe meis kechayil shavyu, because the bottom line is we have the lashon of the mechaber that we just quoted, that we saw yesterday, that Yom Tov Sheni legabe meis is kechayil shavyu rabbanon. The Chazal made it mamish like a weekday. Okay, now we go to the top of Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph Sivav. Says the mechaber, Motor lelavos hameis b'Yom Tov Rishon toich hatchum. On Yom Tov Rishon, you're doing a levaya. You're allowed to do a levaya. You're allowed to escort the mace within the tchum. Let's break over here for a second. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Lamed Gimel. Toichat tchum ritzayin aloymar. What the mechaber wants to say is ad alpayim ama v'lo yoser. You're allowed to be malava the mace for the distance of 2,000 amas, outside of the city limits. That's the tchum, the way you measure the tchum. It's not exact, but 2,000 amas from where the tchum where the city boundary is in context of Hilchas Tchumen, you go 2,000 amas further. That's how far you're allowed to be malava the mace. Now, the chiddush over here is, says the Mishnah Berurah, Afal gav da'ad shalish parsais l'kulei alma einay elamid rabbanon. Everybody agrees that until you travel at least shalish parsais, 3 parsa, which is a lot further than 2,000 amas, until you go a distance of shalish parsais outside of the boundary, you're zicher only transgressing a derabanan. The Isser of Tchumen until shalish parsais l'kulei alma is only an Isser derabanan. Now, Isurei derabanan, we saw previously that Isurei derabanan a yid is allowed to do for a mace on Yom Tov Rishon. So the Chavetz Chaim is pointing out over here that the mechaber is telling you when it comes to levoyas hameis, when it comes to just escorting the mace, that you can't be over a derabanan on. Lo yitiru mishum levoya greda. They did not allow you to be over an Isser D'Rabbanan and to go beyond 2,000 amas just in order to fulfill Levayas HaMeis. If it's something you need to take care of the mace in other ways that require you to be over a D'Rabbanan. So let's say we said tiltal to handle the mace, or other hitzah D'Rabbanan. Other things that were Isurei D'Rabbanan, we said you could do. But this, we're not going to let you do. This is only for Levayas HaMeis. That we're not matir. Now let's go further in the Mechaber. That was Yom Tov Rishon. Continues the Mechaber, top line, Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Ubi Yom Tov Sheni, if we're dealing with Yom Tov Sheni, then afilu chutz l'tchum. Then you're allowed to be malava the mace even outside the tchum. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Lamed Daled. Chutz l'tchum, afilu chutz l'tchum shalish parsais. On Yom Tov Sheni, you could be malava the mace, even a distance greater than 3 parsa, which now, according to some, is already Yisurei D'Oraisa. V'af agav she'ein behem tzarech lameis, even though this levayas hameis is not really a tzarech hameis, Levayas hameis is only an Indian of kavod hameis. It's not something that we would call tzarchei hameis. Afilu hachi shari, still in all it's mutter, and it's even mutter outside of Gimel Parsa, tekechol shavua rabbanon, because once again we have that klal, that Yom Tov Sheni, kechol shavua rabbanon legabe meis. Continues the Mechaber, second line. So you're allowed to be malava the mace on Yom Tov Rishon until the tchum. On Yom Tov Sheni, you're allowed to be malava the mace even outside of the tchum. Continues the Mechaber, v'chayzrin lemekayma b'ay bayayim, and then you're allowed to go back home. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Lamed Hey, v'chayzrin lemekayma b'ay bayayim, fa'afilu yatzu chutz lekama milin. Even if you went a very great distance out of the tchum. Normally, if you go out of the tchum on Yom Tov, on Shabbos and Yom Tov, you're not allowed to go back. Once you go out of the tchum, you only have daled amas. But over here, you went for Levayas HaMeis, you went out of the tchum, you're even allowed to go back home. Mutarin gam kein lachsa lebeisam, you could return back home. Why is this? So really, this is because of the rule that we've seen previously. This is one of those kind of things that hitiru seifan mishum tchilasan. They were matter you something, they're matter you to do something because they're afraid if they're not matter you to do it, then you'll never do the thing that you had to do l'tzarech mitzvah. So it explains the Chavetz Chaim here, she'em yeyasru oisam, if we're going to say that it's usher for you to go back home because you went out of the tchum for levayas hameis, yiyu nichshalim la'asad lavai, in the future, people will be nichshal. Shelo yirtzu leilech, they won't want to travel ulehisasek b'tzarchei hameis u'b'halvayosai. The next time there happens to be a mace on Yom Tov, people are going to say, I'm not going with the mace. I'm not doing Levayas HaMace. I remember last time this happened, people went for Levayas HaMace and then they weren't allowed to come home for the rest of Yom Tov. I'm not going. So Memela, we're matir, if you had to go out of the tchum for the mace, you're allowed to come back. However, the Chavetz Chaim says, u'mistabra, Chavetz Chaim says it's mistabra, it makes sense to him, t'chol zeh im ein sham b'mokem ha'kvara yisavoyshav Yehuda b'soich ha'tchum. That's only true if the place that you traveled to outside of the tchum to take the mace is a place where there isn't a Yiddish neighborhood and you don't have places to stay. Ha'im yesham, if there are Yidden over there. So you have a house to go to, people will put you up, they'll make you a very nice Yom Tov Suda, you'll have a bed to sleep in. Then we're not going to be matir people to come back. But lo yemonu l'lavis hameis. We're not afraid that if on one Yom Tov it happens that somebody has to go outside of the tchum for levayas hameis, and because of that he had to be a guest by another Yid in another town, and he wasn't able to come back until Motzei Yom Tov. So what happened? So he spent part of Yom Tov as a guest in another Yid's house. I'm sure they took care of him very nicely. We're not afraid that if that happens to somebody, now next time nobody will want to do Levayas HaMace. That we're not afraid of. When are we afraid of that? If somebody has to travel outside of the Tchum and now he gets stuck for the rest of Yom Tov on a park bench, then yeah, next time he's not going to do it. But if he gets put up by a fine Yid in another town and he has a beautiful Suda, so why should we be afraid of such a thing? Vayin bir halacha. When his bar pa paiskim, the paiskim explained to become makaim im yachal lekatzer darkoi. Still in all, for sure, if somebody is traveling and there's a shortcut that he could take, he shouldn't take the long way, he should take the short way. In other words, be mimayit. You should any transgressions that you have to do, you should make them as small as possible. Says the Mechaber Weiter on the second line, right by the Ois Katan Lamed Vav for the Mishnah Berurah. I hope the shear is coming out well on the stream. I'm using a little bit of a different technology format today. That was one of the crazinesses of today. But in any case, I'll listen to it afterwards. I'll make sure it comes out good. Okay. Ois Katan Lamed. Now we're in the Mechaber by the Ois Katan Lamed Vav for the Mishnah Berurah, second line. V'chein, similarly, mutar lahachzir klei hakvura shehalicha imayim chutz l'tchum. Let's say the people who went with the mace, they know that when they get to the Beis HaChaim that's outside of the tchum, they have to dig the kever. So they brought shovels with them. Now we're saying that they're allowed to go back home after they do the kvura. Are they allowed to bring the shovels with them? Says the Mechaber, yes. Really, a keli also. If you take a keli outside of the tchum, once the keli is taken outside of the tchum, it's not allowed to come back. Usually the keli only has dalet amos now from wherever it gets put down. But over here, not only are you allowed to go back, you're allowed to bring the shovel back as well. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Lamed Vav v'chein mutar lahachzir klei hakvura u'muktzah einam. And you might think that there's another problem with bringing the shovel back. Maybe now that you finished the kvura, maybe now the shovel is muktzah. Why are you allowed to handle the shovel? Explains the Chavetz Chaim muktzah einam. These kelim are not muktzah. Taharei kelim shemalachtam leheterheim. Because the truth is that these shovels have a din of malachta leheter. Deshem yitztarach lehem lameis acher bo b'yom. You see that they're mutter to use for the burying of a mace, so you can't really call it a kli shemalachta le'iser. Really, it's a kli shemalachta leheter. And therefore, since it's a klisha malachta leheter, you're allowed to handle it, you're allowed to be metaltal it, even if you're only being metaltal it to protect it that it should not get stolen. And in this case especially, since you already were metaltalit in order to do the kvura, even if there's really a place that you could put it where it's safe, Gam kein ein tzarich. You're not mechuyev to. Elamutel yisar mad beisai. You're allowed to carry in the back to your house. Ugedel el b'simin shin chesiv gimel. Now we go to the bottom line of Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph with Sif Zayin. Says the Mechaber, Hamalavim es hames. Those who are doing the Levayas hames, Asurim lirkayv al behema. They're not allowed to ride on an animal. Afilu b'Yom Tov Sheni. Even on Yom Tov Sheni. So really, we've been saying until now that Yom Tov Sheni is Kechol Shavur Rabbanon, that the Chazal gave Yom Tov Sheni a din of a weekday, or at least of Chalamayid, when it comes to Tzarchei HaMeis. Over here the Mechaber says, if you're going out to do Levayas HaMeis, even on Yom Tov Sheni, one thing you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to ride on an animal. Now this is referring to the people that are just doing Levayas HaMeis. This is not referring to the people that are going to be Isaac B'Tzarchei HaMeis, the ones that are going to bury the mace. This is talking about those that are being Isaac in Kavod HaMeis. They're doing Levayas HaMeis. So Hamalavim es hames asurim lirkayv al behema. They're not allowed to ride on an animal afilu b'Yom Tov Sheni, even on Yom Tov Sheni. Va'afilu ha'avelim. And this is true even for the close family members of the mace. Even the avelim themselves, they're not allowed to ride on an animal. Aval ha'koivrim shetzrichim l'kavrei. But like I said, the people that are going to actually do the kvura, im efshir, if there's no other way for them to get to where they need to go, matirim lehem b'Yom Tov Sheni lirkayv al gabe behema. If the kvura is taking place on the second day of Yom Tov, they're even allowed to ride on an animal in order to do the kvura. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Eis Katan Lamed Zayin. Asurim lirkayv. The people doing Levayas HaMeis, they are not allowed to ride on an animal. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hu adin leilech b'svina. They're not allowed to ride on an animal. They're not allowed to travel on a boat. V'afilu b'seichat tchum nami yaser. And these would be yaser even if it's within the tchum. Even though we said that you're allowed to do Levayas HaMeis outside of the tchum, but not riding on an animal. Shani rechiva, riding on the animal is different. Because we have said, give me 1 second here. Okay. We have said we are allowed to do Levayas HaMeis outside of the Tchum, but to ride on the animal you're not allowed to do, even though riding on the animal is also Nisa D'Rabbanan. Why are you not allowed to do that? Explains the Chavetz Chaim, Shani Rechiva, riding on the animal is different. That you're not allowed to do. What's the reason that you're not allowed to ride on an animal on Yom Tov? It's because of a concern that you might come to break off a branch and use it as a switch. And breaking off the branch would be an Issa Daraisa. So v'lo nitar b'shvil levaya. So we're not going to be matter you to ride on an animal with his chash that you might come to break off a branch for just Levayas HaMeis she'ena mi'ikrei tzarchei hakvura, which is not really one of the important tzarchei hakvura. It's only kavod HaMeis. It's not tzarech HaMeis. V'ayden furthermore, also riding an animal on Yom Tov is a greater zilusa de Yom Tov. It's more of a degradation of the kavod Yom Tov to see somebody riding on an animal on Yom Tov than just walking outside of the tchum. Even the avelim are not allowed to ride on an animal. Umashpan, the implication is that even if there's going to be no other way to accomplish Levayas HaMeis, people can't walk over there. V'yashar b'li levaya, so the mace will be left without Levayas HaMeis. Gam ken aser, it's still aser. This is what's true when it talks about the people who are only doing Levayas HaMeis. But the kovrim, there are people who are actually going to do the burial, them matirin lehem, they are allowed to ride it on an animal on Yom Tov Sheni, says the Mishnah Berurah Kat Lametes, umiu lo yirkavu ba'ir. But even the ones who are going to actually do the kvura, if possible, they should not ride on an animal in the city. Mipnei umais, And this is because, very interesting, we don't want the Eino Yehudim, the non-Jews, to see a Yid riding on an animal. They're going to go around saying, oh, the Yidden were Mechal Yom Tov. I saw Yidden riding on animals. The people are actually doing the Kvura. Not only are they allowed to ride on animals, they would also be permitted to travel on a boat. Okay, we're going to break over here. So like I said, a little bit of an abbreviated share, but we did finish a page. And Mirza Hashem, we will pick up tomorrow, Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Beis, with Sivches. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The chus of limud HaTorah should be Megan Agans Klal Yisrael. Rabban Hashem should send Yeshuas, Refuas, Parnasa, and Hatzalah, and Hatzlacha of all kinds to Gans Klal Yisrael. B'chol Makom Shehem. We should be zeichet to see finally the Geula Shlema. Be well.